Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hey, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Little announcement before we begin this topic. And I know from the title that you're probably thinking, no, I really want to get into the topic. Just really quick with us. You know that for a number of episodes, we talked about offering Patreon to our Patreons to help support this podcast. And we've realized that it's just not working the way that we thought it would for probably the sort of thing that we do, which is fine. Can't ever say we didn't try. But if you go to look for it now, you're not going to find it. We did take the page down. We thank everyone who did sign up for it. And please know that the amount of time that you were in it, it was well used and very, very much appreciated. Allison and I want to make sure to put our efforts in the places that reach the most people. So we're going to be investigating a couple of things that we feel like might work better for our audience. And for us trying to keep this going, and we will keep you posted as we make decisions. We want to have the least amount of potential impact on our preschool peeps. No impact would be great. So we're looking for like a no impact means of doing what we need to do. So stick with us. But just know that just like we say to all of you, just try it. We did. And we decided no.
Yeah. Okay.
Decided to use our efforts other ways. Like, for example, taking topics like this and making them part of the regular podcast. So today's topic of healthy sexuality is based on something that I came across, a resource that I came across. And many memories I have of adults being very, very uncomfortable when children did things that could in any way be perceived that way. And even what my college students still say sometimes, and we'll get into that as we go through this episode. So we looked up based on this research that I found, and we dug into a little bit, and we found what is common healthy sexuality behavior for children ages 0 to 5. So in the preschool age group, what you will find really commonly and hopefully doesn't make you feel uncomfortable is children relating to differences in body parts. Like, I have this part, this person has that part. So they're going to be very interested in the differences in parts, and that's normal. There's going to be a lot of bathroom talk. Lots and lots of bathroom talk.
Yeah.
We've all experienced it who've worked in early childhood, right? Lots of bathroom talk, and that's normal. And we want to make sure not to shame children into thinking that is not part of their normal development, to be interested in those words. There may be a lot of talk about pregnancy. They may have family who are pregnant. They have this experience maybe outside your four walls. They may see families who are part of your program or part of your circle of friends who are pregnant. So there's a lot of curiosity about that and a lot of talk about it. And a lot of talk about birth. We don't want to get into
the
how
details?
Can I put this? The bloody details.
So, yes,
we don't want to get
details.
we don't want to get into the details with children, but we also want them to understand things like the baby in my tummy is going to come out. And I've seen people put it in such sweet ways, and books put it in such sweet ways about how, the baby is here because we love each other. And there are just really good books that do it better than I'm doing it right now. But I just want you all to know that all that bathroom talk, all those body part talks, and the talking about birth and pregnancy, normal.
Yeah.
Right? When they take the dolls and they stuff things up in their clothes and say they're going to have a baby, normal.
Yeah, I had boys on the playground this morning put balls in their shirts and were walking around like they were pregnant. And I was like, oh, good for you. Go ahead. I just let them do it. Like, there's no harm in it.
No, they're just really, really curious about it.
Yeah.
And here's there are a couple of other things that are part of normal development, because you may be sitting there going, now I knew all this was normal. Here's the couple of things that I think make adults really uncomfortable, but are part of the normal sexuality development of children ages 0 to 5. One is self-pleasuring at home and in public.
Yes.
You know, once they discover that this feels nice, it's really a normal thing for them to want to do it again.
Right. And I think that's human nature, right? Adults,
Yeah.
if something feels good, they continue to do it too, right? So
Goodness knows.
yeah. Okay. So because I have seen teachers get very uncomfortable during nap time, usually is when I've seen it occur, where they are self-pleasuring during nap time. And teachers get very, very uncomfortable and tell them to stop because it's inappropriate. And I just kind of let it happen, like, because it's just a normal thing. It's not harming anyone. I think it's healthy for them to do it.
Can we just sort of look at them like we would any child who was doing anything other than resting and say, you need to be resting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've looked at other children and say, why don't you close your eyes and try to go to sleep? Can't we just look at them and say that? Like I would with any child. If a child was sitting there picking their toes, I'd be like,
same thing.
We need to close our eyes and try and rest.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think adults get super uncomfortable because it's had such a stigma in society.
Yeah.
This was something that we didn't talk about for generations and generations. So I think it just makes adults really uncomfortable, and they think it's not normal, but it really is very, very normal for children to be discovering their own body parts and what it feels like to discover those own body parts. And so be it. And then the other thing that makes people really uncomfortable is showing and looking at their private body parts, wanting to look at other people's body parts. So looking at their own body, wanting to show their own body, wanting to see the bodies of other people. And that's just normal curiosity for the age. I've mentioned before that I teach a course having to do with professional ethics in early childhood. And there's one scenario that my students have to talk about where there are children using the restroom, and one child peeks in on another child all the time, and the second child gets very upset and says, he's looking at me, and he tried to touch the other child. And then the question for my students is, ethically speaking, according to our ethics for our profession, what should you do now? And the answer is, we're going to talk to both children about respecting each other's privacy and bodies. And we're going to go to the families in partnership and say, here's what happened. You may want to talk to your child. So many of my students handed a paper that says, well, there must be abuse at home, and so we're going to call Child Protective Services. No, that's not. When children are curious about their own bodies and curious about the bodies of other people, that is not necessarily an indicator of sexual abuse at home.
No, I feel like they're noticing. It usually happens around like potty training time, right? I mean, they're realizing like, oh wow, this body part does this, and I have this body part, and then they notice like, wait, that person has a different body part. I wonder if their pee comes out the same way as my pee. Oh, it must not, kind of thing. And like, I think it's just them learning. Like and there's no other way to really learn about that other than to sometimes just take a look, I guess, and see like, oh wow, that is different. But I don't think they're doing it like with any malice behind it or because they've been abused at home. It's just a natural like, hey, you look different than I do. Let me take a look. Not that we should let the children sit there and gawk at other people's body parts, but like, I don't think there's any harm in the point of like they're being abused at home and that's why they're doing it. I don't think that's why we should jump, but I feel like a lot of times that's what people jump to. They automatically jump to he must be abused. This is unusual. She's doing unusual things. So there must be something going on at home.
But the thing is, it's not unusual. It is not unusual for children to be very curious about their own bodies, their own body functions, how their body feels, and the bodies of other people. It is not at all unusual. And it's really about our discomfort and fear for their safety, which, I understand.
I
We
get
have
that.
a fear for
Yeah.
their safety. And that's why I think this episode is important, because we have to think
Yeah.
about what is actually considered normal.
Yeah.
So if you're going to talk about what is considered normal, we have to talk about what is less common, what is far less common. So less common, and something that might indicate that that's actually an issue at home, would be if the children are discussing specific sexual acts or using explicit sexual language. So if a
Yes.
child is describing to you a sexual act, that's a giant red flag.
Yes. I've had a child set up a sexual act or attempt to set up a sexual act in the dramatic play area.
There
Okay.
you go.
And then, yeah, so that was interesting, but, and I never really, with proper terms being used. So I knew something was going on. It wasn't just something they glimpsed at the TV maybe one night. It was like, they knew exactly what was going on, and that was, yeah. So that was interesting. Yeah. But I've also have had to call child protective services over things that were definitely, this is where it's like, yeah, looking at somebody's body part. Okay. And the other stuff that happens that's where you could tell that, like, this is 1 or 2 steps too far. This child should not know these terms. This child should not know this act. This, like, there's normal curiosity and there's something else. And you can usually see that it's something else. And that's when you need to say, okay, this is not common here. What's going on?
Right. If the children are either describing or setting up very specific adult sexual acts,
Mm-hmm.
that is not common. That is a red flag. We are mandatory reporters. Those of us who work with and raise young children, we are mandatory reporters, which means we are mandated to report to Child Protective Services any suspicion of abuse or neglect.
Right.
And there are warning signs for when a child has been abused. There are physical, in addition to, they're going to talk about acts that they should not know about or try to set up acts that they should not know about. They could be attempting to have adult-like sexual conduct with their classmates. That is also a giant red flag. And then there are physical warning signs like unexplained bruises, redness, or bleeding from the genital area, anus, or mouth. And I, like you, Alison, shared a situation. I once had a situation where the child not only was saying certain things, but there was physical proof.
Yeah.
And we had to call about that. If they have pain in the genitals, anus, or mouth, genital sores or milky fluids in the genital area, these are all the physical signs of something has gone on with this child. And, unfortunately, like Alice and I have, some of you may have had experiences where there is this evidence that, and you're standing there saying, I'm a mandatory reporter. I have to report this. And not only because I'm a mandatory reporter, but I have to tell you that when I saw what I saw, it was horrifying.
Yes.
And I feel like it's one of those things when you know, when you
That's,
have experienced it.
Yeah.
Right? When you have experienced coming in contact with the things that are uncommon or the things we should not see on children, then you'll know. When you know, you know.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, if the children are doing things that actually are common, here's what we have to do when children engage in sexual-like behaviors that actually are common. And again, those are where they're talking about differences in body parts. They're talking about maybe birth and pregnancy, their bathroom talk, self-pleasure at home and in public, wanting to look at everybody's body parts, wanting you to see their body parts or wanting to show their classmates. I had lots of that when I worked in preschool. They were like, hey, ever seen this? Yeah. So, so The children wanting to see each other's body parts is common, very common. And so what we have to do is a few things when this happens. If you feel yourself getting tense, you need to calm down.
Mhm.
Please remain calm. And we're going to be kind, right? We're going to be
Yeah.
kind about it. And we're not going to humiliate the children, because we don't want from an very early age for children to think that their bodies are shameful, that being curious
Right.
about their bodies are shameful, that
Right.
being curious about other human beings is shameful. We don't want any of that.
Right.
We don't even want them to think that their words have so much power. All
Sure.
that bathroom talk,
Yeah.
the more upset we get, the more powerful those words become for them.
Yeah.
So, we want to tell them that they need to tell us whenever they're uncomfortable, right?
Mhm.
And when we talk with them about these things, we can't be visibly upset. Please try to remain calm. Please, no yelling at them, no belittling them, no snapping at them because they've done this. The number one rule is stay calm,
Yeah.
right? That's it. And stay calm. And then I saw a resource that said, we have to say to them something like, I see this, or I heard this, right?
Yeah.
Or, this is the sort of thing that you talk to your family about, or, that some things belong at home and some things belong at school. And I need you to talk about that with your family at home. And now let's go play. We're
Yeah.
not going to prolong that conversation either. And above all else, the avoidance of shaming them is so
I
important.
know, because that could set up a lifetime of
Yes.
issues, right? And we just don't want that
Yes.
either.
Right. We really, really don't want to set that up for them. Also know you can redirect. We are masters of redirection
Masters.
in
Yeah.
early education. And then something like this will happen and we freeze because there's so much stigma attached to
Mhm.
human sexuality,
Yeah.
or there has been for so many years. If there's something that you feel, and it should really always, in my opinion, be shared with the family. I think the family needs to know. But the family needs to know, again, what is common. This is
Yeah.
common for this age, or something that's less common. You have to determine if you're going to report it or talk to the family. But the common things, I think that it's really worthwhile to educate the families on what's common, healthy sexuality for preschoolers, like as part of family education sorts of things, to just say,
Yeah.
listen, these things are going to happen from birth to 5. And some people may be saying from birth.
From birth.
I had 2
Yeah.
babies at home, right? I've had 2 children. And yes, they'll do things where you think, wait a minute, that child must realize that feels good. And they're really, really young.
Yeah. They're really young, like diaper
Yeah.
young. Yes.
Diaper young. We're talking diaper young.
Yes.
So that's when you find like hands in the pants and stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I think that it's worthwhile to say to families, here is what is common sexual behavior. Here is what is uncommon, and here's how we handle it.
Yeah.
And
And I think like when you like say a situation occurs at school and you have to have a meeting with a parent about it or just talk about it, I would go over that again, because what you don't want is
yeah,
like you stayed calm in the classroom and then you tell mom and dad and all of a sudden they take their child to the car or at home and they start
yeah,
yelling or disciplining or something over something that really is just a common behavior in child. So like go over that again, even if you've sent it home in the beginning
yeah.
of the school year, do it again. Just be like, hey, just want to let you know this happened. This is common at this age, and maybe give them a resource on top of that if you want to, because you don't want them going home and being like having the reaction that you so tried not to have.
The families get so embarrassed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When you say, or I've had families also come to me and say like, oh my gosh, I can't get them to keep their hands out of their pants. Like, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Oh my gosh, are they doing this in school? And our response should be, that's common behavior for children
Yeah.
this age. Don't
Yeah.
worry. We're not going to make them feel ashamed. We're just going to redirect them to go do something
Yeah.
else. We're going to catch their attention doing
Yep.
something else. That's all.
Yeah.
I also, and yes, if like let's say, for example, their hands have been in that area. Yeah, I want them to wash their hands, but I'm also not going to freak out yelling, go wash your hands, go wash it. I've seen
Yeah.
people do this and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my
I've seen that
gosh,
happen too.
right?
Yeah.
No, just like if they have their hands in soil, I'm going to turn to them and say, you need to go wash your hands now.
Yeah.
Without flipping out.
Because sometimes I feel like that flip out is a reaction that they're like, yeah, and then the child's like, let me do it again so I could see her react that way because she really flipped out, and sometimes they want that, and like, but if you just make it normal, like we do this with like, hey, you blew your nose, you go wash your hands. It's like no big deal. It should just be kind of like that. Like, don't make this huge deal about it. And if they do happen to touch something before they wash their hands, just sanitize after, just go with a little bleachy wipe or whatever you got at school that you sanitize with and just go behind it, and instead of really doing a freak out over you didn't wash your hands, like.
And if children are looking at each other, I think it's very worthwhile, just like we teach children all about social emotional development, or we should. Like in large group gatherings when nothing's going on and we use books and we use puppets and we use dolls and we use all sorts of things to teach them appropriate social behavior. I think should really be part of our problem solving discussions with children, that everyone's entitled to privacy. And we can talk to children about like, where's a place where you don't want other people to come and look? And they themselves will say, when I go to the potty, and we're going to say, that's right. We're going to let people go to the potty. Grown-ups, we keep in preschools, we keep that where grown-ups can see, right? Some places have half doors by their toilets. Other places, if you're using a bathroom with stalls, where they have to keep the stall unlocked. So we tell them that only people you trust can go. And that leads me to the fact that this is part one of a two-parter. And what we're going to do in the next episode is talk about what are the things that we are going to purposefully teach young children to help them with this sort of thing. How do we teach the children to help themselves with encountering these sort of situations? And, what are the things we should be teaching them? That is part two. So we hope that you will next week really tune in early for part two to get the rest of the information about this, but that you leave this episode knowing what is common, what is less common, and the fact that over and above all else, we have to stay calm.
Yeah.
Once we have released the second parter next week, we can add a resource to our website under the listener resources that you can then print out. And that way you will have something that you can read and look at and share with the family. So next week, you're going to look for part two of this, and then you're going to look at our website, howpreschoolteachersdoit.com, under the listener resources, and there will be something there for you.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. So we hope you'll stay tuned for part two. We hope you'll stay tuned and keep listening to us to find out what project are Cindy and Alison going to work on next as we think about the direction this podcast can go.
We always have something up our sleeves.
We do always have something up our sleeves. So stay with us. We so much appreciate you listening from all over the world. Yeah. And we will catch you next time on the podcast, folks.
Bye, peeps.
Bye, peeps.